as more countries look towards Bitcoin as the solution to their problems, which it is, and the kind of normalization of Bitcoin strategies, especially from the US. Like, if even before the SBR, you could look to the ETFs and say the largest asset manager on the planet has launched a Bitcoin ETF. Why wouldn't a poor country allocate some of their capital, some of their reserves to Bitcoin in some way? Just as a prudent asset management strategy, which in theory, every central bank of every country should be doing if that is their mandate, to stabilize prices and ensure economic stability. We had a call with some people working in a country that is possibly ripe for Bitcoin nation-state adoption. And they were telling me, like, this is a problem here, this is a problem, and this is a problem. And I'm like, well, Bitcoin can fix all of those things, right? So the solution is so simple. And maybe it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, it's so simple, people just don't want to acknowledge that it is that simple, that the money is broken, and that's it.
According to Samson Mow, the Bitcoin clock is ticking away. Although the majority of investors continue to view Bitcoin as a speculative asset, Mow thinks that a much larger monetary revolution, one that is led by entire nation-states rather than traders, is about to occur. The CEO of Jan 3 and the man behind El Salvador's Bitcoin strategy is now warning that the race for Bitcoin may become nuclear if one significant nation takes substantial action, such as issuing bonds backed by Bitcoin or converting a portion of its government assets into Bitcoin. This has nothing to do with halving cycles or ETFs. It has to do with central banks having to deal with hard money and governments protecting themselves from a currency collapse. Price discovery will soar, supply will disappear, and capital constraints will become more stringent. We are discussing a supply shock that is so severe that $1 million in Bitcoin is not just feasible, but also certain. If you're intrigued by bold predictions and deep financial insights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more engaging content. Thank you for your support and enjoy the video.
They're, again, the employee has to ask for it too, but they will have the Bitcoin, so they'll be able to pay their employees in Bitcoin. Isn't that how this is how it comes about in a large part, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, eventually people will demand to be paid in Bitcoin because their suppliers, like the grocery store or department store, whatever, will want Bitcoin too. So it's just like an amplification of demand from all parts of society that want Bitcoin. So eventually you working for a company will have to ask the company, like, pay me in Bitcoin because I can't buy groceries with this paper anymore. But hyper-Bitcoinization depends on how you define it, but I define it as the point at which you no longer need to convert Bitcoin to fiat anymore. You can just live on a Bitcoin standard and earn sats and spend sats. But I believe it's coming faster than most people would expect, because these types of changes in money, in the base money that everyone uses, are very quick changes. It's not a slow, gradual progression where, in 2 years, maybe we'll be at 20%, and then another 2 years we'll be at 40%. It's quite exponential, because when most people stop wanting the fiat, then everyone stops wanting the fiat, because it's like a race against time to get rid of the fiat and get into something harder, which is Bitcoin. We'll look back at the period up till 1971 as the monetary dark ages, this period of time in which nothing really made sense. Because if you think about it, when we went off the gold standard, all of a sudden, this paper that was designed to represent gold, it's a IOU for gold, suddenly was disconnected. And you could now take this paper, and whoever can print the paper can make more of it to buy back that asset that was supposed to be represented by that paper. So it's like bizarro world. Nothing really makes sense anymore, because you have a relatively finite hard asset in gold, and you have, a representation of that asset in terms of paper or digital paper, whatever you want to call that. And now this can buy all of this. So, if you really think about it and you sleep on it and you mull it over, it's like wacko that suddenly this valuable thing can be bought by this worthless thing. And this is sort of the conclusion of that experiment. And I think we'll look back in 50 or 60 years, historians will look back and say, wow, I can't believe we were so primitive that we were led to believe that, this piece of paper had value. And that's sort of the realization, the look at it. Not, it's like Bretton Woods type, we agreed to do something, but it's just, we were all insane for decades using paper. We had a call with some people working in a country that is possibly ripe for Bitcoin nation state adoption. And they were telling me, like, this is a problem here, this is a problem, and this is a problem. And I'm like, well, just Bitcoin can fix all of those things, right? So the solution is so simple. And maybe it goes back to what I was saying earlier, like, it's so simple, people just don't want to acknowledge that it is that simple, that the money is broken, and that's it. But as to why Joe Rogan doesn't get another Bitcoiner on, I think he had Antonopoulos on at some point. But yeah. I don't really know. Maybe we're just really bad at getting on Rogan. Like, I always see him tagged, and people suggest, Saylor should go on, Adam Back should go on, and even me. But he never reacts. So maybe we just have to direct our efforts better to get somebody on. But yeah, it's not a hard problem to solve, because I think any of us could make an excellent guest and talk about all these things. And I don't think it's a conspiracy from his part that he doesn't want to get the solution. But, there's always a hotter topic that will generate more views than the money is broken, unfortunately for us. But, once people are interested in Bitcoin, I think it's really hard to look at anything else and think that, well, yeah, I can ignore the money and we can just talk about these other problems, because, that's like kind of where we are at. We see every problem going back to the root cause of the money being broken. And that's all we think about.
Bitcoin broke out of a 3-month downward trend and surged to reach $104,000. A significant change in international trade policy prompted this drastic action. New tariff recommendations issued by the Trump administration exempt important imports from the previous 124% duties on Chinese goods, including semiconductors, laptops, and smartphones. These exemptions cover over $60 billion in yearly smartphone imports, according to the most recent list from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. This is a significant reversal in the trade conflict between the United States and China. Bitcoin experienced a sharp increase after the market saw this as a hint of wider economic concessions. The creation of an Omega candle, a rare technical pattern that frequently accompanies spectacular bullish rises after extended periods of loss, has led some analysts to speculate that this could be the start of a broader trend. According to Samson Mow, this isn't just another price move, it's the early stage of a financial revolution. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications for future Bitcoin, macroeconomic, and digital asset content before we go any further. Now, let's get into his powerful predictions.
Like I said, it's really hard. I mean, I think most people could probably scrape together an emergency fund, but that requires delaying gratitude in a number of areas. Like, cancel your Netflix subscription for a while, or, cancel your Spotify for a while, or whatever, right? There are ways around it, but everyone sort of is set in their ways, and that's the biggest problem. It's not so much that we're not reaching them. It's not so much that our message is not reaching them. I think we're just not reaching them, period. So that's why I think we have to think of better ways to do this, and more creative ways, like Bitcoin trading cards, or whatever, or even like the nation state adoption work we do. That is a lot of outreach to people that are possibly hostile to Bitcoin and very possibly unaware of Bitcoin. And on the best case, they're open to listening. But all these problems that face individuals when it's coming to terms with Bitcoin and the problems of the world, it's the same with the nation state, right? They have their problems. They have they have to deal with poverty or inflation, or they have an IMF loan or something, and there's always something on their plate. And you have to deal with elections coming up, right? There's always an election coming up or something. So everyone's just really busy, and you kind of need to pause, take a breath, and look at the whole big picture from a first principles perspective. And that's really difficult for people to do. They're just on autopilot. And I guess this is why the term NPC is out there, right? They're just, doing their thing every day, and next day reset, do it again. But the only way to really fix the problem and understand the problem is to pause and really reflect. And that's really a big ask, apparently. So we did see a case of this in Suriname. So we were engaging with the central bank there to allocate 1% to Bitcoin. And this is before the SBR, right? Like we kind of knew it's going to happen. And we were telling them, you could do this. And they were interested to do it. And then after we left, we actually went there to meet with them. And then after we left, the World Bank went to visit, and then everything went quiet. So you don't really get to see a lot of of things happening out in the open, right? All of this economic hitmanning is largely done quietly and behind the scenes, and it's just exertion of force from behind closed door and quietly. But the interesting thing with the IMF in El Salvador was that was kind of out in the open, very public and very transparent, right? El Salvador passed their Bitcoin law, went all in on Bitcoin, and you could see that it's a struggle between a sovereign country and one of these supranational organizations. And it was very much publicly aired. So that was a very novel case where you can actually see the battle in the public eye, right? They're releasing research, quote unquote, and publishing articles in various formats and newspapers criticizing the adoption and explaining the risks. Because they can't really just do that kind of quiet quelling of the rebellion. They are limited in when they can apply leverage and what leverage they can apply. So yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. And now we see that they have an agreement with El Salvador, and it seems El Salvador agreed begrudgingly, but you can see it all playing out. And the question really is, how much longer can that go on as more countries look towards Bitcoin as the solution to their problems, which it is, and the kind of normalization of Bitcoin strategies, especially from the US. Like, if even before the SBR, you could look to the ETFs and say the largest asset manager on the planet has launched a Bitcoin ETF. Why wouldn't a poor country allocate some of their capital, some of their reserves to Bitcoin in some way, just as a prudent asset management strategy, which, in theory, every central bank of every country should be doing if that is their mandate, to stabilize prices and ensure economic stability.
Samson Mow draws attention to a basic barrier in the adoption of Bitcoin. Encouraging people to stop and think carefully about the issues that Bitcoin addresses is more important than just spreading the word. He argues that most people are enmeshed in routines and habits, but many might accumulate an emergency fund by making minor sacrifices like terminating streaming subscriptions. Without challenging the financial system they depend on, they are living their lives on autopilot. He makes the analogy that many nations are beset by problems like debt, inflation, poverty, or elections. It is uncommon for even governments to pause and think about fundamental ideas or the broader picture. In order to raise awareness in novel ways, his work frequently entails innovative outreach strategies like Bitcoin trading cards or direct interaction with governments. Mow highlights the importance of nation-state adoption as well as grassroots initiatives. People can reboot their perception of money with the aid of grassroots initiatives. However, when a government publicly supports Bitcoin by establishing economic zones, thinking about Bitcoin regulations, or establishing a strategic reserve, it awakens the general public, including those who are still operating automatically. He concludes by pointing out the growing logic behind Bitcoin allocation. If BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, has launched a Bitcoin ETF, why shouldn't developing nations consider Bitcoin as part of their reserves? It's not just revolutionary, it's becoming common sense financial strategy. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications if you thought his viewpoint was helpful so you don't miss any updates. We'd love to know what you think about the future of cryptocurrency markets, so please share your ideas in the comments section. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the next video.